Welcome back to the McDowell-Phillips Project House. Today we're here with Brian Farron, and we are talking about this pile of rocks and sandstone and whatever this is in front of us. Brian, tell us a little bit about what this is, where did it come from, and why is it here?
Well, one of the big things we noticed about the house right away is the front sidewalks were very uneven. The sandstone over years has sunk and cracked or broken, very disjointed and very unsafe. And the city has a procedure to notify property owners that fix it or we'll fix it for you.
Sure.
And we had our cement contractor, 880 Construction, who did some previous work for us. They had already put a bid in to replace it. But we didn't know the sandstone was going to be so large in some sections.
Yeah.
I went through and told them to salvage what we could, because some pieces were 4 by 6 feet and could be repurposed eventually for a patio or some structure footing out here by the barns eventually. So they proceeded to pull probably a dozen or so good pieces out, and anything large they also kept. But this piece in particular is nearly a foot thick.
This is massive.
4 foot by 6 foot. It's just a massive stone that was in as a sidewalk. And why or how horses back then could have moved this with block and tackle, it's amazing. But there it was.
Did they give you any idea of what this might weigh?
No, but it's all the tow motor or the bobcat could even do to, I don't want to get OSHA over here, but I'm sure the boys had trouble getting it out with that kind of weight on the front end of it. It was very hard to pull out, but they did salvage quite a few. They also selected 4 of the best pieces and replaced the front walk leading up to the house. So those pieces had cracked and broken as well. Yeah. Now we have some nice new pieces there. So again, it's a nice entryway to the front porch, which is where our guests will enter the museum. So we're real pleased that they could have salvaged this much. And we'll find a purpose for it eventually. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. But for right now, it's too heavy to move anywhere else. So they're going to stay here a while.
That's great that you're preserving part of the past and repurposing or reusing. And, but also making it safe for the guests, because eventually the museum will be open to the public, and we want people to be able to come in and out and not hurt themselves.
We have all the appropriate ADA requirements now leading out to the street. It's a very smooth transition, and the new driveway apron is very smooth coming in, so you actually don't lose your cup of coffee pulling in anymore. So it's a real nice advantage, and it makes it that much easier to get into the house.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go around front? You found kind of another cool thing in the barn, which is now on the front porch, and it has a direct tie to R.M. McDowell and the Phoenix block up on the square. Let's go take a look.
Sure.
So as Brian shared in the back with that sidewalk that was taken up, they were able to repurpose some of the pieces out here to make it much more safe for people to come up to the museum. I think it's kind of cool to keep another part of the history of the house out here and repurpose it to make it safer for guests. Now let's go up on the front porch and talk about that find that they had in the barn. So as we've shared numerous times, the small barn at the back of the property has revealed and given up many, many treasures. And another treasure that was found in the barn loft is this beautiful bench here. So Brian, tell us a little bit about this and what you've discovered about its history.
Sure. Well, there were actually 2 benches in that barn that we pulled down, and we weren't sure the origin or what they were used for. We did find an old photograph of the tennis courts out back with a corner of the bench showing, so we felt the family might have used them in that purpose. But when we were repairing one of the middle leg pieces last week, I took it off and I had standard welding weld the cast iron piece back together. Another neighbor noticed the back side of the benches actually had a stencil that said Phoenix Hall, which looks really cool.
Yeah, let's pull this out and show
it. Really identifies where they originated.
So what's kind of cool about that, Phoenix Hall was on the 3rd floor of 39 Public Square, which was the old Phoenix Bank, which was built by H.D. Blake and then run by R.M. McDowell. So Phoenix Hall at the time in the 1870s was the place where the community gathered and had parties and social events. So this would have been the seating that was up in that hall.
Sure. And by the length of time, perhaps, or over the years, the 3rd floor of the bank was probably developed into more office space. Perhaps it was even Blake McDowell, who was at the bank at the time, might have brought him over and stored them at the house or found a purpose for these benches. We suspect there were probably more, but so far we have 2, and they're both in very good condition, and we're just really cool to find out where they might have been originally. And here they are years later found and repurposed again as part of the findings of this house. And it just makes another part of the story come to life, that people actually use these items in events 100 and some years ago. And Phoenix Hall was the hub of social activity in town. So chances are, if there was any event of substance or size,
it was there.
Phoenix Hall was the venue people used.
That was really cool.
It is.
Brian, why don't we go inside and see what progress has been made?
Sure. Been working a lot of inside projects this week.
Put this back. As the volunteers have been working to renovate and restore and preserve the house, they keep covering kind of clues to the past of what the house looked like and how it's been changed. What's kind of cool is there was a trim board up here that we saw a little bit earlier in the process that's been removed for refinishing and uncovered some vintage wallpaper, probably circa 1930, 1940. But what's kind of interesting about this room, so at this height, this would have been a plate rail perhaps, where decorative pieces would have been set. But we noticed down here on the casework for the door that this outline is down here. So at some point, this piece was down here. We don't know why. We don't know why it was moved back up. But again, it's just one of those cool changes to really kind of understand the evolution of the McDowell-Phillips house and how we've gotten to this point today. We're back up in the turret room today in the bedroom, and Brian shared this piece of wallpaper that was found in the attic, again, during the digging through of stuff up there. Now, we don't know where this goes or where it went in the house, but it is period to around 1890, 1900. What's been kind of cool is throughout the process, volunteer Paul Wood has really been working on putting in appropriate wallpapers. So up in the bedroom today, we have this beautiful paper that is actually a little bit subtle for the room, but the intention was to do something as a backdrop to show off the original furniture that we talked about last time we were up here. Now, Brian, tell us, Paul's an amazing wallpaper hanger and does a wonderful job, but he said this room is difficult.
Yeah, I rarely see him lose his cool, but yesterday, this room has 13 different planes to hang paper.
Yeah.
If you look at all these angles,
sure,
and try to line up the print precisely, and of course, not everything's always perfectly square, especially in a plaster wall. He's been taking painstaking steps to make sure it looks perfect. And he's a perfectionist when it comes to wallpaper, and he really knows his stuff. But even with his skill level, it's a taxing thing to do. And we're only, I think he's hung 4 sheets so far. This is extra wide paper,
2.5 planes in,
which makes it even more of a challenge. But the paper itself is an excellent choice. He even did a transition paint on the cove ceiling and the picture hanging rail, so it would transition nicely into the wallpaper from the ceiling. And when this room is finished, it's going to look great.
Yeah, it's really nice how it complements the woodwork and just the light coming in this morning. The room is just glowing, and I can't wait to see it all put back together.
We found out from Mr. Charles Griesinger, who lives in New Hampshire now. He was a Medina resident for many, many years, a local attorney, good friends with the McDowell and the Phillips families from way back, several generations. He had a recollection, he's 95 years old, of meeting Bio McDowell in this room in her rocking chair. And he acknowledged that back to Gloria Brown in recent correspondence, that his memory is so sharp, but he distinctly remembers meeting Bio in this room.
Really?
And I think that's pretty cool to know that we have Bio's bedroom set and RM's beautiful furniture set. And this room's going to be a real, I think, a standout room once the house tours are open.
Well, it'll be fantastic. We can't wait to see it. As we've been documenting this process of the renovation, restoration of the McDowell-Phillips house, we've been kind of hopscotching around the house just because of the nature of volunteers working in different spaces. The room that we're in now is the entry hall to the home, and it's really the first experience one would have when they would come to the house. So this is where the guests would come in and really be greeted and kind of get a sense of what they're going to see through the rest of the house. This is very indicative of the shingle style with this massive fireplace. What's kind of cool is most people would think of a home of this era. Most people would think of a home of this era being very fancy and formal, but it's really not. It's really kind of stripped down to just a very plain element and the columns here. What's kind of cool is the original gas sconces are still here, and this beautiful fireplace. Now, we don't quite know the history yet of the ironwork, but we know that these are original to the house. And it's pretty neat that this was likely hand-wrought here locally, we would guess, maybe at one of the ironwork shops in Southtown or on Smith Road. This space will eventually be more of a presentation of R. McDowell and kind of H.D. Blake, and giving you a sense of their history and their part of the community. What's also kind of cool is as the renovations take place, if you look around the top of the wall, you see this shell motif and ribbon. That's actually a stencil that's textured. It's almost like a sand in the paint that was put up there. What we noticed before is when the light hits the ceiling just right, that same design is also in the corners. So this room potentially can be restored and we can actually bring back the original look and feeling to get that full experience of 1890 in this house. Brian, what's been some of the fun things that you have discovered as you've been working in the space about this?
Well, this room, as you said, was a very important room. In the basement, while I was cleaning out some of the old furnace parts, this turned wrought iron piece was down there, and it certainly matches the fireplace the way it was held. Joanne King suggested it could have been a footrest, you know, and that was a very common element in old fireplace ironwork. As you drew closer in the colder days, it kept your feet very toasty, I'm sure. But it's just a beautiful set of ironwork. And as you said, coming into the house, this was the first thing that greeted you. And during the holidays especially, this area would have been very decorated with probably settees and tables in the greeting area. And it's just, like Matt pointed out, a beautiful fireplace, and your family treasures would be featured on a mantle of this size.
Yeah. What's kind of cool about this to me is throughout the rest of the house, the fireplaces all have that really beautiful, intense glazed tile, whether it's the browns upstairs or the blues in the dining room. But this has this really sublime terracotta that just, this whole room is peaceful. There's nothing glaring and jarring in here. It's just, it's a very formal welcome to my home and come on in.
Exactly, and obviously this could accommodate quite a few people in this room, just as a greeting hall. And again, you had the feature windows looking right up Washington Street.
Yeah.
So I could imagine this room would have been a great gathering spot for the family and guests.
Well, it'll be really cool to see how this room is transformed and how it's ultimately used as a museum.
It will definitely be one of our showcase rooms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brian. Welcome back to the McDowell-Phillips Project. Today we're going to talk about the exterior of the home and some of the final touches that have been done, and a little bit more about the landscaping and the hedgerow going in. Brian, tell us a little bit about the trees and what's going on today.
Sure. This day Boyards helped us procure 30 blue juniper trees that are on the north side of the property here. That'll be a very nice cover eventually. They'll grow about 15, 20 feet tall.
Oh, wow, okay.
There'll be redbuds trees here in the spring, as we've mentioned on previous episode. But today we have a lot of volunteers on site to help plant the trees. We have Beth Schnabel from the Medina County Soil and Water Conservation District. She's our chief educator, and she's here to assist and coordinate the project. So all the trees and the holes are properly prepared, and we get these trees seeded in properly for good solid growth.
Yeah, nice, that'll be great. Yeah. So you pointed out something kind of important. Other than the trades on the house, everything being done is by volunteers who are friends of the Historical Society or neighbors or community members that want to get involved and help out.
We've logged well over 800 hours a month, and that's probably conservative because some of us forget to log our hours, but we do try to encourage both members as well as non-members that have helped us in this project to please let us know the hours you invested, even at home, composing letters or emails and things like that. A tremendous amount of volunteer support, which we could never have done this project without it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, why don't we take a walk around the front of the house and see the new roof that has been put on the porches and talk a little bit about the gutters.
Sure.
So we're back out front of the house, and I don't know if you remember, back in March, the house was covered in gray shingles and deconstruction was going on. There's been men and women crawling all over this house working on it, but now we're pretty much at the final phase of the exterior restoration. Brian, tell us a little bit, what was the last step and kind of the final touches that have been done this past week?
Yeah, this past week is about 9 months into the project, and we had new asphalt shingle roofs on both the front and the rear porches, so that they look very nice. The shingles were getting aged. We had a lot of hail damage on the back roof. So now we have nice new shingles that complement the nice paint scheme.
And those were donated by Owens Corning, right?
Owens
a local
Corning,
company.
our local producer of shingles, donated
Fantastic.
them. Andy Sharp, a local contractor, installed, and he actually became a member. So,
oh, cool.
We don't let any contractor off the premise without a membership blank.
Absolutely.
So that helps, and he was more than happy. He has quite a interesting Civil War background that his family shared with us,
yeah.
and so he's going to be a good member. But the last piece is the gutters. The Miller Spouting is putting on all new gutters in the system. One of the things the house suffered was water damage from old downspouts that were leaking or gutters that were not working any longer. So now we'll have brand new gutters and downspouts on the house to really get the water drained properly.
Yeah, that should really protect it.
Yes.
Well, I mean, think back. So in March, the house has always been a beautiful house, but it needed a little bit of love. But then reflecting back today, just how far it's come. And as you said, even those gutters, look at the size of that roof, the water that must come off of that, and just to protect the house.
The house had several cisterns around the perimeter before public water system was hooked up. And so I can imagine the fall of the land, the house drained very well.
Sure.
As long as the gutters and downspouts were properly draining.
Yeah.
So anyway, it truly is a remarkable house. I mean, every day I come here, I say, I can't quite believe it's all come together. And as you see on the inside, we've been just as busy on the inside as we have on the outside.
Well, it looks just fantastic. I love how the details pop out, the porch just sings, the windows show up, and you've done a fantastic job.
That porch swing's very addicting too.
I bet it is.
My afternoon phone calls are done from the porch swing, and that's a great way to relax, and I can only imagine how many families before us enjoyed that beautiful view.
Yeah. I know you did some work in the larger barn on the property. Why don't we take a walk back there, and now that it's cleared out, we can take another look and kind of revisit where we were a few weeks ago.
Sure.
So we're back in the big barn on the property, and as Brian said, volunteers have been very active cleaning out and doing work around the house. So there's not a whole lot to talk about in here, but it is kind of cool to be able to see clearly the hand-tuned beams and how this was put together. We think this possibly predates the house. This could be one of the original barns that was on the property. Brian, any thoughts for the future of the use of this barn?
Well, our vision is to eventually have a new carriage house built here. So we would like it for display room as well as events, and we would like to repurpose as much of the barn's architectural features as we can. There's some really cool sliding doors back here. There's some old hinge doors. Upstairs we have a chicken roost and another jelly cupboard, as well as some other furniture, it looks like.
Nice.
So there's some old features of the barn that I think would look really cool in the right environment on a new structure.
Yeah.
That would be much safer, and of course have more modern amenities for outdoor events.
Great.
Volunteers worked really hard on this one last Saturday. There was a lot of items in here to take out, assess, and decide what to do with it. So.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing what you do with this. Why don't we go back inside and see how Paul fared with hanging that wallpaper up in the turret room.
That looked really nice. I think you'll like it.
Well, Brian, one of the first rooms to be close to done, we're back up here in the turret room, the original master bedroom. It's really beautiful to see how your volunteer Paul was able to deal with, what were there, 13 different planes here?
13 planes to contend with. A paper hanger's nightmare.
Yeah, he did an amazing job lining that up. And it's cool to see the original furniture back in place. Of course, we don't know if this is exactly where it was placed, but we know it was original to the family, we know it's original to the house, and we know it's original to this room. And that's kind of unprecedented for a house museum that's gone through so much to have this back.
It truly is. For 130 years and 5 generations to still have the original bedroom set here. Yeah. And it's quite a remarkable piece. It's just so intricately carved, something you just wouldn't see. And it was very well made. You can even tell by the backboards. This set was, I'm sure, fairly expensive in its day.
Absolutely.
And for whatever reason, the high Victorian style was chosen perhaps before they built this house. Mm-hmm. It may have been in their older home. But regardless, it's a gorgeous set. And it's quite sturdy, so I think it'll be here for quite a few more years.
Yeah, it's just monumental. So when the house opens as a museum, how will this room function as part of that experience?
Well, this will be one of the feature bedrooms or rooms of the house that will actually illustrate that a family truly lived here. While we are a museum, of course, at first, we also want to explain that this was a family home for many years.
Sure.
So throughout the house, you'll see elements of not only the family's collection, but some of the other historic items from the community that made this house so interesting. We're hearing from more and more former residents. In fact, we had one stop last week who explained what the house looked like in the 70s. And that was quite interesting to learn how Drew Phillips' grandfather had the house into apartments. And she rented for $125 a month. Quite a beautiful apartment, actually.
Absolutely.
So that was pretty cool. But as far as this room goes, this will feature some, like the John Smart house. Will show a bedroom scene. There'll be accessories with things you would normally find in a bedroom. Mm-hmm. We do have a baby cradle that's coming. That's a very interesting Victorian piece.
Okay.
We have the lounge here. This is actually my grandmother's lounge from my family farm in Spencer, Ohio. Beautiful. And it's all the way through several of my family's inheritance, and now it's found a permanent home here, which is just a perfect addition for this room.
Well, it's just fantastic. We look forward to seeing more rooms being completed and added to, and seeing how they come back to life. Back in the dining room today, Farrell has been working on the woodwork here. Now, Farrell, tell us a little bit about what you're doing to the doors and how you're bringing these back to their original gloss finish.
Well, mechanically, first of all, the doors are in very good shape. As good a shape as I've ever seen pocket doors in.
Okay.
All the mechanicals are there. The little flips come out. We don't have the key, so if anybody has a key to old 1890s pocket doors, please let us know.
Drop it off.
Very large key. The wood is a maple.
Okay.
And it was in good shape because the pocket doors were mostly closed the whole time. So they were just a little bit of dirt on them. We've gone back to shellac. Probably about 8 coats of shellac on it right now.
Wow.
This door here is done, and this door we're still working on, and it's drying, so it doesn't have quite the gloss.
Sure. Okay.
The jambs around the door have been cut. Again, they're a maple, but at the sawmill, 1890s, the sawyer there cut it so they would have this nice stripe effect in it. So it looks like the vastly more expensive tiger maple, but it does give a really good effect, and it would have been quite something in its day.
It's really fantastic, and I know you were talking about kind of looking at this door that's all done and then one that's in the room that has yet to be done. Yeah. You really can see the difference of what a cleaning and a shellacking does to bring back kind of that gloss and warmth.
Yeah. And remember, the light that they had was candlelight, oil lights, that sort of thing, gas lights.
Right.
And this shine really reflects things back in the room and just really adds a good glow to the room.
Oh, that was beautiful.
So that's what we want to try and duplicate again in the 21st century, what they had in the late 19th century.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing this room complete when the other wallpaper comes in and the furniture comes in as well. Farrell, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.
We're back up in the attic in what is originally the billiards room, and as they've been going through things and finding things, here's some of the treasures that they found so far. Brian, tell us a little bit about what you have in front of you.
Well, sure. When we were laying some ductwork for the air conditioning unit, one of the back rooms had these really cool toys. I call this kind of like a snow scooter.
Yeah.
Somewhat like a snowboard with a handle and rubber tread that one would walk. It's very sturdily built. We don't see a patent or a name brand on it, but it's kind of a cool toy.
So do you think it was for a kid? I mean, certainly
I would think so. I would think it was probably a child's scooter. Probably on ice or snow, it would probably move pretty good.
Fun.
Wax the bottom of it with candles or wax paper, as we used to use.
Downtown hill.
That would get it going.
Yeah.
And in addition, we have a rocking horse, probably more from the, I would guess maybe from the 40s or 50s decade.
Right.
We also have another one behind me that was more from the 60s.
A little bit newer.
That just about every house I grew up with had one of these.
Sure.
And so it's pretty cool toys that we'll eventually have on display somewhere in our attic find category.
Now, what about this dirty rusty box over here?
This was tucked way behind with the knee wall closet on the other side of this wall.
Yeah.
And it's evidently a unit that went on top of a stove, wood burner or coal fired.
Okay.
It does have the chimney outlet here.
Yeah.
And it has these louvered or rolled up doors that would have kept your food, bread, or dinner plates warm.
So on the front of that, what does that say?
It has the, it's called a hot closet.
Hot closet, okay.
And it's patented in 1898, I believe.
So this, you think, would have sat over the original stove, perhaps in the kitchen, and as they were cooking, they would put stuff in there to keep it warm until it was dinner time.
Yeah, actually 1896.
All right, very
December.
cool.
So it's a really cool piece. Why they elected to save this?
Because they saved everything.
Everything in this house
So
was
why
saved
not?
for a purpose or a reason. So it's pretty interesting find. We do have a stove of this similar vintage at the John Smart house, but I don't think I'm going to lift a 500-pound stove to move it anywhere.
Yeah.
So we'll find a home for it eventually in a display.
Cool.
But it's a pretty cool find.
That's really neat. Why don't we take a peek into the big attic again and
Yeah.
kind of give a preview of what Joanne and Tom and Brian and Carol and the other volunteers will be working on in the coming months.
Right. As we said, the exterior projects are wrapped up, but there's still a majority of work in this house remains.
Absolutely.
And that is going through the attics and documenting and cataloging each item. So you'll see some of the new ductwork as we go through.
Sure.
For the air conditioning, which is a vital piece for our museum operation. So
Yeah,
come on in.
Go check out the big room. So we're finally up in the attic of the McDowell-Phillips house. This is one of my favorite spaces, partially because it's just like this tomb that's been uncovered, and there's centuries of things up here. So as we're looking around, this is, again, what the curators will be going through over the coming months and kind of sorting through. But Brian, up here, we have literally centuries of family history and trunks yet to be uncovered and opened and see what's in there. Boxed up shelves, books, artwork, light fixtures. How are you going to attack this? How do you sort through something like this and decide what do you keep, what do you showcase, what do you preserve, what do you just box up and put away?
Well, that's why we have a session committee, because they will do exactly that. They're going to look at things and see the relevance of the item, if they can tie it back to a particular family member or era when that item might have been used in the house. We have sewing machines, as you mentioned, furniture.
Yeah.
We have the original toilets when the house was built with 2 bathrooms, as we mentioned in past episodes. The original toilets are there, and behind me, those large wooden cartons are the original bathtubs.
Oh my gosh.
In the house. So they're tin bathtubs, and for whatever reason, the family saved them.
Because why not?
Because you do those things, and but the trunks are still untapped, like an archaeological dig.
Yeah.
We haven't even opened many of them. Some are stenciled with owners' names, perhaps, and they ended up here for a reason. The books we found, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of books, everything from classics to particular subject matter that was of interest to the families or the members of the family. I found one just on top from H.G. Blake to his wife in Christmas of 1868, I believe it was.
Gosh.
So, you know, notate in the front, many were author signed, which must have been a fairly popular thing that H.G. Blake in his role as a prominent congressman, he might have had friends. Same with R.M. McDowell. He had many friends that to personally autograph a book, like today, that's kind of a special thing.
Yeah.
So we have
But that'll be really cool. Like some of these may end up back downstairs in the study in that bookcase that's being worked on.
Absolutely.
To our right is this amazing, what you call the lighthouse window. And we want to show the viewers that again. That's really one of the key prominent features of the house that, how many window panes are in
I
that?
think there's 110, I believe.
So 110 window panes, and it's such a beautiful element of the attic.
It is, and it's a rare glimpse you have from this direction, too.
Yeah.
Looking out to Washington Street and being able to see the town from a whole different perspective.
Right.
I can tell you I washed those windows last week, and that was not an easy task, kneeling on the ledge and leaning forward and hoping I didn't lose my balance, but it was fun to see them cleaned up. And now it is lit up at night, so if you drive by the house, hopefully you'll see it lit up.
Brian, once this is all gone through and accessioned, will this part of the attic then just be used for storage?
Yes.
Kind of like overflow storage?
As you can see, there's a lot of insulation on the floor. A house this size, obviously the heating bills are a concern.
Right.
So we will probably leave most of the insulation. We might clear off an area for a small display where people can walk in and take a peek inside the attic.
Yeah.
But I think once you get a look at this, you're going to realize how ominous of a task this is to
Yes.
go through. This is like cleaning out your basement or garage from many, many years of storage. We don't even know what's above us yet.
I was just looking up, realizing, you know what, the attic doesn't stop
No,
here.
there's a
whole
storm
other
door, there's a
10 feet of
TV antenna,
space.
there's more beds. As you'll hear in other episodes about the family, when they came here at Christmas, they stayed for 4 or 5 days. So the number of beds in this house is starting to make sense.
So it was like the McDowell Hotel at that time?
Yes, it must have looked like a dormitory out here with all the rooms having day beds or a full bed set up. You can see remnants of beds and rails back here. I see something even from more like the 40s vintage.
Yeah.
So all the way up to when the Bio and her daughter passed away, this house had a lot of activity around
Sure.
the holidays. So, and as people came and went or passed on, maybe their belongings ended up here for lack of a better place to put them.
Yeah. Well, it'll be really cool over the next couple months to work with you and Joanne and figure out what's here and kind of document the process of going through and uncovering everything.
It's going to be a big undertaking, but we'll do it methodically as we can and hopefully be able to document everything and,
Sure.
like you said, make those decisions. Do we clean the items to properly display them? Do we perhaps find other uses for the material?
Yeah.
And some items we may eventually sell to support the house if we find no relevance to county history or the house. But
Absolutely. Well,
those are all
fantastic.
decisions forthcoming. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We hope you join us next time where we'll get some updates on the work going on downstairs in the rooms, maybe get another glimpse of some of the materials that have been uncovered here, and continue to document the progress at the McDowell-Phillips house.